What is up? Welcome to another long overdue episode of Rockets Talk. Got my boy Roosh back. 7 games into the season, your Houston Rockets are 4-3 and trying to make some noise in the West. I think we are currently in the early season standings, 4th in the West. Brother, what has been up and what you think about these Rockets, man?
Man, glad to be back. I'm chilling. Life is moving, and it's election day, which we don't have to get into, but it's quite the day.
It is.
So we got a long night ahead of us, and possibly a long few days ahead of us. We'll see. But man, I'm chilling. I'm 7 games into the season. I'm trying to figure out what this team is. I still don't necessarily know, but I'm happy with the start so far. So what's good with you?
Yeah, same. I think the season has been up and down. My main thing with this year is trying to be patient because with this team, if you get too low on them, they can go on a run and make you look foolish. If you get too high on them, they could go on a bad run and make you look foolish. The way I figure for a young Rockets team is that kind of the gelling period is going to take some time, maybe a couple of weeks before they actually hit that peak of efficiency. And for me, what I'm looking for this year is like, if you remember last season, we got into a groove like towards the end of November. And we started, even though we lost some games, but we were beating some good teams and playing kind of, you'll win 3, lose 1, win 2, lose 2, win 4. Like, then all of a sudden we got to January and bang, we hit a wall, right? And I think that was just overall the fatigue of our players that aren't used to playing meaningful basketball for that extended period of time and the expectations. I think that really caught up with everybody and the level of play that they were playing with. I think this year, because they're a year older, they kind of understand what they want to, what they are required from their coach. People know their roles a little better. I think another year in the NBA to know your pace, a little more depth on this team, in my opinion. I feel like they can sustain it and actually make it. Because to me, if the team, especially young team, if you can make it to the All-Star break, you're good. Like post All-Star break, everybody can turn up. But it's really the difference to me for this Rockets team is how they look going into January. If they're still got juice, then we might be cooking with some. If we crash out in January, then it's going to be hard to make up those games that you don't do well in January.
Yeah, I agree. To your point of what you were saying about you can't get too high, you can't get too low on this team. I feel and I have a bad feeling that this is the kind of team that's going to play up and down to their competition, as you kind of saw against Charlotte where they melted, as you saw in the Spurs games. Although the Spurs might not be that bad. I don't think they're going to be good, but they might not be that bad. They were up 40-14 on the Clippers in the first quarter, and they lost that game. I don't know how they did that, but the Rockets came out and got worked by the Warriors without Steph. They made the comeback but fell short. But then they go out and they beat Dallas, and then they go out and they beat the Knicks last night. So it just feels like one of those teams that when they play good teams, they're going to show up. When they play bad teams, I hope that they take care of business. We'll see. To your point about the wall in January, a lot of that coincided with Tari getting hurt. And then right on the heels of that, Dylan got hurt. I think Jabari missed a few games somewhere in there. Şengün had that back injury where he had his back wrapped. Fred missed a few games. So they just got beat up, and they didn't have the depth that they do have this season. And then also I think a big difference that I've seen with this team is that so far, at least, it looks like last season they couldn't survive with Fred off the court. This season, based on the data, there's an argument to be made that maybe they're even better with Fred off the court. I feel like it's way too early to determine that, but Fred has not been good to start the season. He was much better against New York last night, but he still hasn't been the guy that we saw last season. And then obviously with the emergence of Amen and Tari and, Reed Shepherd playing some quality backup minutes, and Jalen stepping up and all that, it just looks like they might not be so Fred dependent, but that's, early on, that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's still hard to know. I mean, they could easily be, what are they, 4-3? They could be 6-1 right now, if they finished off the comeback against Golden State. And if they didn't blow it to Charlotte, if they just didn't blow it to Charlotte, they'd be 5-2. One of my good buddies, Jason Timpf, who covers the NBA for the Volume, Colin Coward's network, he did a power rankings, and he had the Rockets at 10th in the power rankings, in his power rankings. And I have not, it's power rank. I'm just saying I haven't seen the Rockets get that kind of love in half a decade. So I thought that was
That's
interesting.
true. I think that power ranking stuff reminds me of how teams are ranking the Texans early in the season. I'm going to say
Yeah.
that's fraud alert.
Yeah. Well, the
Maybe I'm
Texans
wrong.
didn't
I
make
don't
any
know.
moves. Texans
Yeah,
didn't
that's
make any
true.
moves at the deadline. So I'm feeling much less optimistic about that season.
Real quick to your point about Fred, when he's on the court, the team has a +1 net rating. When he is off the court in 160 possessions, plus 15.7. So incredibly significant
What's the number? What's
play
the number when he's off the court?
plus 15.7 was something that I just kept an eye on. But so far from what you've seen, what I've seen with my eyes, yeah, there's something missing. And a lot of it to me, in my opinion, it has to do with the fact that um Ime seems like he's trying to get off of him and Shangun in the pick and roll at the primary basis of the offense. And I think Fred is suffering from that a lot, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, it just seems like he can't do anything other than getting to the basket. I mean, sorry, he cannot get to the basket. It seems like he can't do anything other than running the screen and roll and then shooting a three or dumping it off to Shangun, right? Like it just seems, and the three's not falling. So he's still keeping the ball secure. So he still has like a decent assist to turnover ratio. I don't think he's putting out 8 dimes like he was last season. I don't know his stats off the top of my head right now, but efficiency is in the tank. Three balls not falling for him. And if those two things don't happen, like last season, he had his most efficient season as a full-time starter of his career, I think, right? And his 3-point percentage, high volume, good percentage. So he held his own. But yeah, now that's gone. And so he's just running screen and roll. And honestly, Ime, we can talk about Ime's offense, but Ime's we're basically running high screen and rolls and DHOs. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's normal, basic basketball. I'm okay with that. But you got to have some wrinkles. You got to have something else. And if the Rockets really want to take the next step, that's what they got to do. They're only 0.6 points per 100 possessions better on offense this season than they were last season. Right. The offense looks the exact same. They're number 10 per NBA.com. They're number 10 in offense. But like I said, they're basically half a point better. And last season, that same statistic, they were 20th in offense, right? So I think they still have a lot to figure out on offense. The 3-point shooting is in the tank. Dylan, Jabari, Amen, Fred, none of them can shoot threes at a high rate right now. Jalen has been the best 3-point shooter so far, and he's had a couple bad games shooting the 3 ball. So he was up like 40-something percent. Now he's down to 37%. And if he goes into a slump here, he's going to regress back to last season and his career percentages, right? So no one can shoot the 3 on the team right now. It's a miracle. Honestly, I think the thing that's saving this team right now is that they offensive rebound. They're a good offensive rebounding team. They save possessions by getting extra chances. Amen has a lot to do with that. Jabari, Tari, Shingun. I mean, for not being like the biggest, strongest team, they're very active on the offensive boards. But I don't think that's something you can rely on in terms of design. So I don't know. I don't see any sign that Ime is going to like manipulate the offense. So that concerns me.
Yeah, and that's something I talked about. I'm going to read off these are from Pivot Fade, the Rockets, some of their rankings and some advanced stats. Right now, we are 30th in the league in true shooting percentage at 52%. So we basically have the true shooting of a rookie point guard. We are 29th in EFG, so that's on 2s and 3s combined. We are 30th, and to me, this one is for an Ime Udoka team. This is surprising me. An assist percentage. And obviously that probably correlates with hitting shots, but 30th in assist percentage. And I'll talk about why that's significant for Ime. We are in rebounding percentage, 8th. We're on defensive rebound, 25th. To your point, offensive rebound, we're 2nd in the NBA. We are 28th in blocks, 21st in steals. 3-point attempt rate, 19th. And in free throw attempt rate, 19th. So all of this is terrible, honestly, for the offense. The assist percentage being so low
I
When
hate it.
Ime when Ime was hired by the Rockets, when you do a deep dive on that Celtics team that he came from, one of the hallmarks of that team was their assist percentage and their 3-point attempt rate. Both led the league in that. Like their team passed the ball, and they were always an extra pass type of team, and they got up a lot of threes. And they, even though some, for the most part of the season, they made a decent amount, but they didn't really get really efficient to the second half of the season. One thing about Ime's offense, the offense might be worse right now than it was last year.
It
Um,
feels like it.
and the reason is, in my opinion, they still haven't decided on what their actual offensive philosophy is. And to me, a lot of that has to do with personnel. We have so many different styles and types of players that aren't being utilized to their strength. It's almost like a coach that has a system, and whenever he shows up to a team that he's going to coach, he forces the players to like play into that system rather
Yes.
than innovative coach. And there's no diss at Ime. This to me just how I see it, where those innovative coach looks at the talent and builds that as their system. You let the talent determine what you do. Like if I have a team of a bunch of guys, I love using football as an analogy. If I have a Derrick Henry at running back, I got a quarterback that's like a Michael Vick or somebody that like a Lamar Jackson. I'm not gonna have my quarterback throwing the ball 40 times a game. We're gonna pound the rock. And I'm gonna come up with creative ways to run the ball and then get my passes off. It seems like there's a mismatch between that, and for me, is just they still haven't really set the hierarchy from a game to game basis. You'll see like Dylan Brooks. There was a clip of where Ime is telling, "Take the ball, Jalen. Get the ball, Jalen." And Dylan Brooks totally ignores him and tries to go like he did hit the shot. This was to I think one of the games we
Oh,
won,
was this at the end of the Mavs
the
game?
Mavs game.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
applauded that. That's not good, bro.
That's one of those classic, like, no, no, no. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that's to me that's not good, bro. Yes,
No.
you have a mismatch, but can you imagine like PJ Tucker doing that with James Harden clapping for the ball in the closing seconds of a game?
No,
Where
I agree.
yeah, like so we need, and this goes into the benching of the players, right? Like we're not at the point, and I understand why he does it sometimes. Sometimes I don't. But you have to let these dudes kind of get on the court, and you have to kind of say, this is what we are, and we're gonna go for it, and let everybody kind of fill in. And part of the issue is we just have too many guys. They have too many
Yes.
guys, and that's
It's a problem.
that's gonna be a problem. I hate
Yeah.
to say it because I want a world where all of our guys are able to stay. I just don't see it because some of them are really talented, and as talented as they are, they want to. And if I was them, I would want to. If I was their agent, I want them to explore their talent. Take your shots, right? If
Yeah.
you get the ball, if you get an ISO, go for it. But on a real team, on the construct of a team, that doesn't work. There has to be a hierarchy. Like, okay, even though I have this ISO, I'm going to give the ball back to Jalen, and then we'll go from there. So I think big picture they have some things to do, but in the micro right now, love what they did against New York, and it does kind of speak to what to me is easy for them to do, which is lean on Shangun as like the initiator of the offense, and everybody play off of that. To me, that's probably the baseline of the team, but I don't know if that's going to win you anything significant in the long term if they don't get better all around.
Yeah. And let us know in the comments what you think, what your hierarchy would be, right? I'd be interested to hear what people think the hierarchy should be. But you're exactly right. That's why when Tillman made that comment about we have the most depth in the league, I was like, there's different types of depth, right? There's having a bunch of guys that can perform, and then there's having depth that fits the structure of the team, right? Like just having, Cam Whitmore, for example, out of the rotation, which doesn't really bother me necessarily, to be honest, because he hasn't been playing that well. And I don't know if he's not hitting his shot, like I'd rather have someone else in there. But Cam Whitmore, for example, is falling out of the rotation, right? Like you need actual depth. You need someone that supplies or supplements what you got going on in a way that when, your starter comes out the game, there's they maintain the rhythm or the flow, and the identity kind of maintains. It's not just like, hey, I got a dude who can drop 20. Let me put him in. Boom, depth. It's like, yeah, but it has to work. Case in point, like Amen. They got Amen doing a lot. Amen's got a green light to shoot threes. And like, for example, in that Warriors game, there was a point in overtime. I think it was 123, 119 Warriors, maybe something like that. And we needed a bucket. You know, there's 2-3 minutes left in overtime. It's one of those like moments of the game where you got to score, because if you don't, your chances start to become slim. The Warriors are clearly sagging off of Amen, right? Like 6 feet sagging. And he pulls a three. And it's just like, that's what they wanted you to do. You should not have shot that shot. I don't know why you have the green light to shoot that shot. He also had a couple of possessions where he just took it straight to the rack, made a nice move, and he finished, but like he totally ignored running offense and just went ISO, right? He had another possession, I think, late in the game, maybe in overtime as well, where he did, I think we were down 125, 190. We were down like 6 maybe at that point. And he drove and he took a fadeaway and he had Jabari wide open at the top of the key, totally ignored him, just ISO 1-on-5, right? Dylan Brooks, the play that you described. You know, it just Cam Whitmore will come in the game and just take people 1-on-5. It's like they need to understand who's who, because, and we had this, it's like an extension of the talk we had last year, just playing fast and putting 5 athletes out there and like helter skelter, you know, playing super intense, draining all your energy. That's cool. That doesn't work for 82 games. It might work when you're down 31 and you need to, you know, force a comeback, and it worked. But it doesn't work for 4 quarters for 82 games. You need a real offense. Guys need to know what is expected of them on a night-to-night basis. There can't be that confusion. There can't be that, hey, I'm just, you know, we all do our own thing. Everyone eats. So like, I'm just going to go get mine, possibly at the expense of us actually playing well as a team. And so they need the hierarchy. And the easiest, like, if you're not going to have a hierarchy, you're really wasting Şengün, right? And they need to make that decision. If you're just going to like, everyone eats, everyone distributes the ball, Dylan Brooks takes guys off the dribble, we'll just randomly play ball, the point of Şengün is diminished. The point of Şengün is to give him the ball to attract extra attention and then to work off of that. And everyone starts getting open. Guys break, you know, there's overhelp on the defense. Guys break down the lack, you know, the extra space, whatever. And then it all flows from there. Or Jalen and Şengün. But the ball's in Fred's hands all the time. And he's kind of a game manager at this point. He's really not like that dude anymore. Like I said, Amen comes in. They got him running point guard. They should have him as the 4. They should honestly explore Jabari Smith as the backup 5, in my opinion, because something about that starting lineup, I mean, the numbers might be good, but it doesn't look good. And I don't know if it's going to hold up over the course of the season. And they got to find a way to get Tari Eason more minutes. And they got to find a way to pair Amen Thompson with the right folks, right? Jabari, Amen. You leave Jalen in with the bench unit, like something like that, right? Put Reed in there. So they've got some tinkering to do. All things considered, 4-3, I'm happy with it. But there's just something about it that is clunky right now.
Yeah, and that's why it's a game to game thing, like the team that you're going to get. I do like you know, some of the developments within the season from some of the guys. Some things are becoming apparent, like the synergy between Tari Eason and Amen Thompson defensively and in transition is as advertised. Like I always assumed that they would be a good pairing, and they are. Like they are awesome. Pretty much every lineup they're in is just devastating. And to what I had seen from the starting lineup, I don't think it's necessarily Jabari like is the issue, or it's Dylan is the issue. I think it's all of them collectively, all kind of a redundant as far as how they play, and meaning there are more half court players that would thrive with somebody that's more like a chaos push the ball type of player next to them. The problem is
Yes.
everybody in the starters except Jalen is like a half court methodical. Let's slow the game down. And for our team, because we cannot shoot in the half court, that really bogs down the offense. So
Yes.
the best way, in my opinion, is to thread the needle between going all out with just 5 athletes, which, like you said, it can work in certain lineups. And there's games where it's like on the Warriors where it's going to bring you back because you're turning the team over and getting into transition layups, hitting threes in transition. But a team like New York, where they're sound defensively, you're just not going to turn them over like that. And they want to slow the game down. You got to be able to kind of play that grinded out game too. I liked how they put Tari and Amen in with the starters to kind of offset that. Now, to me, if you're going to put a lineup with Tari and the men, Fred cannot be the point guard because he kind of defeats the entire purpose of it. Because they have plays where Tari and the men get a stop, they'll give it to Fred because he's the senior on the court, and he'll slow it, walk it up the court. This ruins the possession, in my opinion, right? So to me, exploring lineups with those two or one of them with either Reed or Jalen or Reed and Jalen or other guards that aren't Fred VanVleet, or if Fred wants to be on that, he shouldn't be the one bringing the ball up, is going to be beneficial. It kind of kickstarts that starting unit. So we don't start off in the hole as much as we've been doing currently right now. The Rockets, in the first half of games, we have a negative 2.3 net rating right now in the first half of games, right? In the
Wow.
second half of games, we have a plus 10.5 net rating. So we're a
Hmm.
slow starting team. We start off always at some point where our offense hits a brick wall and then everything stops. And I think Ime, I noticed he kind of went to the bench a little bit earlier in this last game because he saw that. And they got to be able to get into that.
Look, Dylan Brooks and Jabari Smith, in the context of how they play next to the starting lineup, they're mostly standstill shooters, right? Dylan Brooks is kind of just like a standstill shooter, or he takes it ISO or posts up. Like that's really what he does. He's not much of a cutter. Jabari occasionally cuts, but as a catch and shoot, spot up shooter, I think the numbers from last season say he's like 38, 39%,
Mm-hmm.
but the eye test just doesn't match it. And this season so far, it just doesn't look like that. He made 1 3 against New York off of movement. Steven Adams, I think, had the ball and was setting screens up at the high elbow. Jabari came off a curl. He didn't get the pass immediately. He kept shuffling his feet to the right. Then he got the pass. Then he made the shot. It seems like he's more comfortable moving. Like he needs to be moving or have some kind of rhythm, not off the dribble. Just like they got to start using him off movement, right? But my point in all this is they got to find some type of movement in the starting lineup. They got to find cutters. Amen or Tari Eason would greatly help the starting lineup because when they just stand still, we're basically stuck watching Şengün post up, and then they'll double down and they'll dare, 3 guys who aren't shooting a high percentage at all from 3 to shoot. And it's just like it doesn't make for good offense, right? So if Fred's 3 ball is off, if Dylan's not hitting threes, and then it also kind of makes things difficult for Jalen because now it's basically a Jalen Şengün screen and roll with Fred and Dylan kind of lurking and Jabari just posted up in the corner who's not really hitting a shot. So they need some extra element, right? And if you're going to have that, at least have a men crashing the offensive glass from the weak side or something. So I'd like to see them explore that more.
Yeah, I mean, those are all great points. I'm hoping over as the season goes on that they'll start picking up the shooting. We cannot be the worst shooting team in the league for the entire season. We
Well,
cannot.
we could be,
We
but
could
we
be,
won't.
but we cannot.
But we won't be the 10th rated offense if we continue
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, the offense. But okay, so let's go through players, and we can talk about just briefly what we've seen from them this season. So starting off, I'll start with Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore was a DNP in the last game, struggling like crazy. I think he's only made 1 3 on the season.
Mm.
What do you like? What do you think is happening with him that he's not able to get into a rhythm, or is it just something that he just needs more time, or what do you think his issue is right now?
I just think he's the victim of the modern young American basketball player who's like, I got to score. I get the rock. I got to score. And so he's struggling to find ways to contribute when he's not scoring. So he thinks I got to score, right? So it's like he's doubling down on the fact that he feels like he needs to score. So he's forcing it. He's not scoring. He's shooting and hijacking possessions, and he's just killing the flow. And so by doubling down, he's hurting himself and he's hurting the team. So if he could find some way to just be instead of being a ball stopper, if he could be like a mover, right? If he could maybe focus. This is my remedy when you can't get your shot going is to figure out how to move. Unless you're able to handle and facilitate, which is also another great way to get involved. Which that's not his game, right? He could obviously he could be better at facilitating, but I don't think anybody expects Cam Whitmore to like run pick and rolls and hit the skip pass or hit the kick out to the corner or whatever. So if he could just use his athleticism to cut off the ball and be devastating that way, and if he could train himself to keep the ball moving, right? He gets the ball, he doesn't immediately have to just square his defender up and like hit 7 dribbles, Keep the ball moving, set a screen, cut to the open spot, and just like blend into the offense instead of taking it over.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's suffering from basically what Jalen did early on, but he doesn't have the rope. He doesn't have the
Yep.
cachet to just be thrown out there to just figure it out. So I said the same thing about Jay Gupp when he was here. Like, if you're a player, you're not the premier player, you're not a star player. You have to learn to be other things. To me, Cam Whitmore's best path to getting significant minutes and becoming a star was to play like KJ Martin for his first few years in the NBA, right? Be a guy that
Yep.
runs in transition, cuts, is try to hit your shots, even, just take smart shots, make or
Yeah.
miss. You know what I mean? Take the catch and shoot. You don't have to dribble it. Cut, make the right extra pass, do all those little things, play defense, and you'll get on the court. And then over time, as you refine your game, the coach will put you on, and you may get those opportunities to scale up what your responsibilities are. But yeah, I totally agree. I'm hoping that this doesn't destroy his confidence. And I guess this is a great character test for him to be able to see, because he is extremely talented. But hopefully he responds to this positively. All right, let's go to Reed Shepard. What are you seeing from Reed this season so far?
I like what I'm seeing from Reed. I think a lot of people had really high expectations for him, which I think was unfair. He's number 7 out of the core 7, and that doesn't even factor in 3 vets on the team who play, right? Dylan, Fred, and now Steven Adams when he's healthy. Um, but when he gets his minutes, he's not doing too much. He's not trying to hijack the offense. He actually runs offense. He keeps the ball moving. He runs clean offense. So I like that. Again, limited minutes, but he'll run a screen and roll. He knows when to pull up and hit that hang dribble in the midi. He'll skip it. He'll kick it to the corner. He's just blending into the offense. And I think actually some people would prefer he do more.
I
And
would.
maybe that's
I'm
a
I'm people.
criticism.
I'm
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So maybe that's a criticism, right? He
Yeah,
feels like it feels like he's not trying to rock the boat because
yeah,
he knows his role. But I like that, right? I mean, I'd like
yeah,
him to do more, but I like that he knows his role. And then also defensively, his hands are very real. I mean, the quickness of his hands, like that was the thing, right? Oh, his hands are so quick, so he can make up for his lack of size by, knowing how to position himself and being quick to get to the ball. And so far, I've seen that. So
yeah.
that's what I think.
I am with you with that. To me, he's the antithesis of Cam Whitmore as far
Yeah.
as playing style. Like, he is the extra pass guy. He does all the little things that you want players to be able to do. And for him, I think that the way he's playing right now, as long as he scales up and continues to do what he's supposed to do, he's going to see more minutes. The coach obviously wants him to shoot. They obviously want him to be more aggressive on the court, and I think he's starting to show that a little bit. The thing I really like about Reed is his versatility, and I feel like the Rockets aren't even using him to the best of his abilities right now. But hopefully, that comes over time. When he's on the court and he's a spacer for Shangun or any of the main actions, the defense actually, they have to honor him. And he is one of the few players that I seen in the New York game where he was standing next to Shangun after he gave the entry pass that they did not double off of. You could tell, I think it was Miles Bridges. You could tell he wanted to, but he just never committed to it because he kept on looking like, which one do I pick? And I like that. Like, we need more of that on the team. So I think Reed is he one of the things that surprised me is his defense has actually been better than his offense. And I have a thing is, if you're good at the thing that you're supposed to be bad at and the thing that you're really supposed to be good at, you're struggling at, I do not worry about that.
Yep.
Like, people worrying about Shangun's efficiency, like, or his scoring, while he's playing pretty good defense and rebounding. Like, you don't worry about like guys that can score. Like, that's what they do. If they're doing good, you got to look at the other stuff. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
He's really got this element of like no way to quantify it, but it feels like when he finally eventually gets the keys to an offense and he's got the players around him to run the right offense, it feels like there's a little Steve Nash in there somewhere. Just his ability to feel out the defense, make the right plays. Maybe he's a little too unselfish, right? Steve Nash was pretty unselfish to the point where a lot of times it was like, man, you just need to shoot because you're the best shooter on the court. And that's a lofty expectation. So I'm not expecting him to become that, but you just get that little like that vibe.
Yeah, he just needs more aggressive. All right, Amen Thompson.
Amen looks awesome, man. I mean, defensively, he's a menace. I mean, I've been saying it for a while. I don't think it's like exclusive to me. I think a lot of people have been saying it, but he looks like an all defense type of player right now already. I mean, he is one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league already. I'd maybe even go so far as to say top three, right? Like Dort, a man, and someone else. And then offensively, I've said this, he's just not a point guard. He has the skills to play point guard. Like technically he can bring it up. He can do the things a point guard does, but he can't shoot it. And so there's always going to be someone sagging, but he is so good at crashing the boards. He's so good with his instincts. He has a nose for the ball. So it's one of those players where it's like, man, take him off the ball and let him just wreak havoc off the ball, because he beats people to the ball, both physically and athletically, and IQ wise. He's good at making that extra pass. Like when you forget about him and he cuts behind the defense and gets the ball and then the defense collapses on him, he knows who to find to make the right play. He also knows how to manipulate defenses. You saw that play, I think it was against New York last night,
The
where
pass,
he got it. He did the fake
fake
pass to the
pass.
corner, and
Yeah.
then like he's like, that's the value of him off the ball. You put him on the ball, that play's not going to happen, right? But you put him off the ball, all of a sudden it's 6'7", 215, who can pass, finish, handle, and like that's a problem when you got to make a split second reaction as a defense 6 feet away from the rim, right? So he is, in that regard, he's been awesome. I don't know what his efficiency is. Maybe what his TS percentage is for the season. I don't have it memorized, but I feel like he could be more efficient if he stops shooting from distance. Doesn't mean he should completely stop, but he really does need to understand, like, hey, we're down 13, or hey, we're down 4 with 3 minutes left. Like, do not shoot that shot, right? If it's early in the game, or if we're up, or if it's, like there's still a lot of time left and you can feel the game out. He just needs to get a little bit better at understanding the timing of when he's going to shoot from the perimeter or when he's going to take someone off the dribble, because those are not his strengths. And maybe this is selfish, but I'm just not interested in watching him develop those. I want to win, right? And him winning, or the Rockets winning, involves him being that off ball like 4, because that's where he is a positional nightmare for the defense.
He's actually been pretty efficient. 57% on twos, 22% on threes. If you want to look at glass half full, he's doubled his 3-point percentage for the from last year. 58% true shooting. So I think I could
Okay,
live with that. I could live with
that's
that.
good. But just imagine if he wasn't shooting the threes, he'd be 60
Yeah, he'd
something
be
percent.
much more efficient. I think
So,
Amen reminds me of like Sean Marion, or one of
yeah,
these like all around, like multifaceted players. His defense is, and to me, not just his defense on the, he guards in a post, he fights in a post, and he doesn't go for fakes, he doesn't foul. His recovery, his length on
it's
contesting
crazy.
shots. Jalen Brunson missed so many of those fadeaways that he usually those are layups for him. He could not get away from Amen Thompson. There was a play where he had Tari and Amen adjacent to each other, try to call a screen. Tari was there, bothered him, try to go back. It was Amen, and he just ended up frustrated, just threw up just a wild shot. When you got two of those type of players on your team, it's really, really, really hard to score, even if you have negative defenders. Um, like he is special. I really love the game he's playing so far. He started off the year a bit on the shaky side offensively, but seems like he's starting to find his groove. I do agree. He is more of a point forward rather than a point guard. And what I'm also liking this year, him and Alp have been playing really well next to each other,
Yeah.
which was something that a lot of people worried about because of the lack of shooting
We
between
saw
the
it
two.
last season. They did last season too.
Yeah,
It's
they
because they're
did.
both smart
Yeah,
and
it's
because
just
they have
IQ
complementary skill sets.
and,
LP can pass, Amen can cut. Like, it
supplemental
works.
defensive strength. Like
Yeah.
they're able to help each other, and I think
Well,
that's a great deal.
you can have Shengun hedge on the perimeter because Amen's behind him, for
Yes,
example, right? So like it works. It's not like Shengun pressing up now bleeds into Jalen picking up someone on the wing. And we use the term wing a lot, and I do too, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I'm gonna transition back to using forward. He's a forward.
let's go to Jabari Smith Jr.
Jabari Smith, I mean, look, he's a valuable player. Defensively, he allows the Rockets to be versatile. I'm pretty sure that the stats with him on versus him off are favorable to him being on. When you run him at the backup five, it allows you to do a lot of different things with versatility in terms of defense. But man, I need the shooting from Jabari Smith to be as advertised from college, because it's devastating that it's not. Like his floor, what we're seeing from him is supposed to be his floor. 3 and D, but the three hasn't been there, right? I've kind of I don't expect him to become a star. I don't think the Rockets have the time or resources to develop and go all in on Jabari Smith developing as an offensive star. So if he does break out, it's going to be later in his career. It's going to be a few years down the line. But he's still valuable defensively. He's still valuable on the boards. But if he cannot shoot the three, at least at 35%, ideally at like 37 or 38 or more or better, if he cannot do that, it's going to be one of the more bizarre things I've ever seen, because his shooting in college was not, I mean, it wasn't like a fluke. You know what I'm saying? He was pulling up from super deep. He was doing it off the dribble. He was doing it off the catch. He was doing it in the face of defenders. He was doing it against double teams. He was doing it in big moments. Like, he could shoot flat out. And so the fact that he's not able to, it stuns me, quite frankly. But at least he hustles. He's a hustle player, and so it works because he's 6'11".
Yeah, I mean he is a plus 1.6 on the court. When he's off the court, the Rockets are a plus 10.6. So he's another one of those players that the team is playing currently better when he's off the court.
Really?
Obviously, yeah.
I thought I saw a stat that like was the total opposite of that. Okay, then I'm wrong.
Nah.
Wow.
He's. You got to remember who's coming in for Jabari. It's usually
Okay.
Tari Eason.
Sorry. Yeah.
So Tari really eats up a lot of that efficiency. Not saying necessarily he's still a positive and on the court a plus 1.6, which is a leap for Jabari because early on in his career he was a big negative when he was on the court. So I think he is still finding his way. I have a lot. I'm not going to sell my Jabari stock. I see flashes just like you of things that he does really well. There are times where you see him moving his feet good and he's able to cut off guys. He uses length. There are times where you see him come off a curl or, like you said, when he's moving, he comes off and hits a three, especially in transition. I think one of his best shots, in my opinion, is the trail three in transition. It seems like more than often he's going to hit those shots. I think to me right now, the issue with him is, like you said, if he's not elite at shooting, similar to Cam Whitmore, he doesn't really do a lot else. And this year, one of the things that he hasn't been doing that he was doing in previous years is rebounding. Right now, let me see. I don't even know what his rebounding stats are. 7.9, which is pretty good, but there are a lot of stretches in
Right.
the game where he just doesn't make that presence felt on the glass. To me, he should be a close to double-double guy on a night. If
He
he's going to
has to be.
start, he has to be. He has to
And
be
look,
that.
if he can't hit, if you're able to sag off Jabari Smith to guard Shangun, that is a problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not. He's sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead. And I saw a stat that said that Şengün leads the NBA in box outs this
Hmm.
season so far. To me, Jabari should be the primary benefactor from that. Like he should have like 11 rebounds. Like he should be killing the glass. I put a thing that the Rocket between him and Şengün, they should average 30 rebounds on a good game between the two of them. Like they should try to go get 30 every night from the forward and the center, because Fred ain't rebound like that. Dylan ain't rebound. Jalen can rebound. So, but we need that production because that's really what's keeping us at the top of all these efficiency charts is the fact that we give ourselves so many opportunities to not only score on offense but also secure possessions once we play defense. So
Yeah, I
I'm going
put
to
it.
be a little more patient on him just to give him more chances. But I could see a world where, I mean, Tariq and my man could be pushing for that forward spot for him.
I mean, that world could exist right now, and you could argue they could replace Dylan Brooks or Jabari. It just depends. Obviously, Jabari's taller, Dylan Brooks is stronger, so it's like, do you want to go with the small ball and kind of make up for it, or do you just, how do you want to play that? But the shooting, I mean, it's the shooting, right? Dylan Brooks is at least making some threes. He's not even shooting a good percentage, but he feels more reliable from three than Jabari. I put a tweet out, and maybe it was mean, but I was kind of joking, kind of not. But I said if Jabari was 6'5" instead of 6'11", he'd be working at Home Depot.
Where?
But
Home Depot? What'd
Home
you say?
Depot, yeah, Home Depot.
In the garden
Uh,
section. No, I'm playing, but yeah,
all right. But the gist of that though was like he's really just all hustle right now, right? He doesn't have athleticism that sets him apart from his counterparts. He doesn't have a shot. On ball skills very limited, right? He's just all hustle, and it's disappointing. Like all hustle can work. You could just be a hustle player who can shoot a three, and you could be super useful. But he's a hustle player that isn't particularly big or strong, that doesn't have the ability to get above the rim at a respectable level, and he can't shoot. So there are times where it's just like, how much better would the Rockets be if they had someone else there that knew their role and was comfortable in their own skin to contribute? I'm not out on Jabari Smith, but again, we're 2 seasons in and 7 games into season 3, and that 3-point shot is missing, and that's serious cause for concern.
yeah, that definitely needs to pick up for him because him being in the corner is going to be very important. Um, I'm hoping he finds his footing because to me, last year his being up at 38%, 39% was significant for him. But since
No,
everybody,
no, 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 no. No, last season he shot like 35 something percent
I,
overall. It was
I
like
think it
38,
was on
39
catch and shoots. He was like
catch and
30,
shoot. Yeah.
38, 39%.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Jabari. Now, what about Tari Eason? Let's talk about your boy Tari.
Tari, man, it's just great to have him back. I mean, you saw it against Golden State. I think that was probably the best game of his career. He makes a difference. I mean, sometimes he makes some boneheaded mistakes.
Yes.
He seems like he's not a good shooter from three, but he seems to make them enough to be respectable. Definitely better than um, than than he was scouted to be as a shooter so far. Um, and I mean, the 7'2" wingspan and those big hands it's the real deal, right? He wreaks havoc in passing lanes. He gets out in transition. When you have to switch between Tari and Amen and Jabari and Dylan Brooks, like it's a nightmare. And it's just the hustle and the offensive rebounds. He's one of those guys that impacts the game, impacts winning. Even if the stats aren't necessarily always pretty or if the efficiency is not pretty, he just impacts the game. And he's another one of those guys that has a nose for the ball, great instincts, puts his head down, gets to the rim. Sometimes he does it negligently, right? And he'll just drive into a crowd and turn it over or take a dumb shot. But you take the good with the bad because the good generally outweighs the bad. But flat out, the Rockets are a better basketball team with Tari Eason playing heavy minutes. And Ime said that he hasn't seemed to have like pain or soreness, which is good. So if that's the case, keep ramping him up, keep playing him, possibly even start him at some point.
Yeah, Tari, talk about his efficiency right now is beautiful. Shooting
Really?
54% on field goal. He's shooting 38.9% on threes, 61% true shooting on the season so far. Just all around, defensive monster. The length, the transition CTE is notable, and that's something that he needs to keep working out of his game. What I've seen from him this year, a tighter handle, a little bit of creation for himself. They let him run a couple of pick and rolls. I've seen him and Şengün do a couple of DHOs. I think that he is progressing rapidly, and he's really pushing the only thing to me that would kind of hoe him in a little bit is the fact that because he's so dynamic, they would want him coming off the bench to keep that bench unit spark, which could
Yeah.
typecast him as a 6-man type of player, which
Yep.
I totally think is unfair, man. If we
Yeah.
were actual running a real meritocracy, he should have been starting probably like their rookie year over Jabari. But I'm curious to see if Ime is going to pull that trigger because to me, he unlocks so much for our starting units, especially when you put him next to Jalen and Şengün. He just opens up everything. Hell, when you put him next to Jabari, he makes Jabari better. I think they play really well off of each other. He just brings energy in.
Well, because he gets to the like it's right now they're trying to be a team that spreads it out and shoots it with the starting lineup, but they're just not good at it. And so at some point they have to reckon with that, and they have to kind of just go all in on the identity. And the identity is dominating the glass and getting to the rim. And Tari Eason helps you do that.
Those are things. Yep. So yeah, I'm with you. I really, I mean, he's the fact he gets better every year to me is a positive sign. And players like that, you really can't put a cap on what they could be. I mean, honestly, I think Tari has a lot of upside still in the NBA, and he's just scratching the surface on his skills. All right, so let's get to Jalen Green.
Jalen Green, man, I've been really impressed with him. Eye test, he looks comfortable. He looks much more confident, decisive. He looks much more comfortable with his athleticism and how to use it, right? Change of pace, change of direction is all there. He's floating in the air and finishing. 3-point shot looks much improved. We'll see if that's real. I hope it is. If it is, I mean, look, we talked about it a lot. A big thing for him is the shot going in. That's like a huge game changer for him. And right now, the 3-point shot is going in. Last couple games, he's had some stinkers. So it's like the old Jalen Green reared its head back, but that's okay. That happens to high volume guards as long as on the average he's playing better than not. That's what you want to see. My two concerns right now, and even by the way in the bad games, like against New York, he hit a couple big shots to seal it, right? So like even though he was bad, he showed up when it was needed, which is the mark of good star players, right? So he's been playing close to before the New York game, before the Golden State game, he was playing at an all-star level, bar none. Now you factor in those last two games, maybe not all-star level, bar none, but very close to it at the very least. My two concerns though are the mid-range shot is not going in, so it looks broken, which is not encouraging. But hopefully he can figure that out. He's kind of had that issue his whole career. And then generally speaking, the efficiency is down again. Before the Golden State game, he was like 58, 59% TS. And now he's like, I think 53%. So he's like right back to where he was. It's only 7 games. So we'll see how it goes. If he keeps shooting well from 3, then the efficiency will ultimately be okay, unless he's just terrible from 2. But yeah, overall, that's what I'm seeing. So, I mean, he's doing what you'd want him to do so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, I think for a majority of the season, he's looked mature. Like you said, his game is really slowed down. Last game was probably his worst game, pressed a lot. You could tell that he wanted to help the team and get a shot, so he started forcing the issue, which he hadn't been doing all season. So like to me, he just has to remember to stay patient because the game is going to come to him. And I think that's something I complimented him in the offseason. In the preseason was that he was playing more off ball, letting the game kind of flow towards him. Personally, I think the success might have made him feel like he needed to do more, but just being mature enough to know that some nights you might just have to go out there and rebound and just like, cut. You know what I mean? And some nights you don't need to take 15 threes. And some nights, given the look that you get, you might need to take 15 threes. So I think those are things you're going to figure out. But I'm past the point for him. Last game aside, I look at his defense. He's been consistently a good defender this year. The rebounding has been much, much improved this year. I think he's playing more as a team, like within the context of the team more. And to me, those things have made him a positive for the Rockets for pretty much every game, even the games where he shoots bad. And if he is that, and you get Şengün to come back, Fred starts hitting the shots, that level of play from him elevates our team. Because if you guys don't remember, for the first half of last season, he was bad. Like he
Bad.
was
He was
hurting us.
getting replaced by Aaron Holiday.
Yeah.
Bad.
So this year, even when his shot is not falling, I'm process oriented. If you do the right things, at some point you're gonna get rewarded for doing the right things the right way. So if he just doesn't get away from that and starts pressing and lets the game flow, if somebody else is, if Şengün's feeling it, if Fred is and is getting the pick and roll, he's feeling it. Let that happen. Find other ways to win and impact winning. So so far, like I think that he's been pretty good. He's been really really good actually. Okay, last but
Yeah.
not least, Alperen Şengün. What is your assessment of his up and down season so far?
It's been a weird season for Şengün. Started off super, super hot, hit a major slump. Efficiency's been in the tank for him. And then it looks like he got back to being himself again against New York. I don't buy Ime Udoka saying there was no injury. Like there's photographic evidence of Şengün with a wrap all the way around his back. He had that same issue last season. When he has that issue, he has no lift and he looks like shit. And that's what it looked like. So there's that. I don't like the constant benching of him. Like accountability is one thing and that's cool. But at some point, if he's the guy that you extended at the number that you extended him at, and he has this high usage rate and you're running your offense through him and you really want to like build on the near all-star season that he had last season, I mean, you play to that, right? But they haven't really kind of tethered an offense around him. And at some point, they either got to commit to that or they got to commit to the fact that they're not willing to do that and figure out what their identity is. All that being said, though, I'm not worried about the offense. He's earned enough. He has enough cachet, in my opinion, to where I'm not going to worry about the offense unless we're like 25, 30 games in and he just looks like shit offensively. That's when I'll worry. Free throws look better. 3-point shot overall looks a little bit better. And the rebounding. I mean, he's one of the best rebounders in the NBA, which
Yep.
is really interesting, right? So, which is a needed thing. I mean, if he's going to be a slightly smaller big man, he's going to have to make up for it by doing things like rebounding. So, that New York game was one of those where it's like, okay, cool. That's the kid. That's the Turkish kid I remember. So I'm not worried about him. I'm a little disappointed in the fall off. I also think though that some of it is matchup related. The Spurs are not a good matchup for him. I know he dropped 45 on Wemby, but having Wemby with Sohan on his back line or vice versa, Sohan with Wemby on the back line, that's a tough matchup, especially if you don't have spacing, especially against Popovich, who very clearly remembers Şengün dropping 45 on them and was like, we're not going to let that kid do that again, right? So 2 of the 7 games are those matchups. And then you have the Warriors, who have historically just always been a bad matchup for him. Although I did think it was kind of bullshit that they didn't bring him in later in the game because you saw the offense stall out and, that's your guy for offense, right? In overtime. But all that being said, that's 3 matchups out of 7. Matchup 4, the Hornets, he was awesome. Matchup 5, the Knicks, he was awesome. And then you have the Mavs where he was pretty good. And I forget the 7th game. But yeah, all things considered, he's trending up.
Yeah, I think that he's taken 2 leaps this year. One, defense. His pick and
Mm-hmm.
roll defense this year has been just a massive improvement from last year as far as how he's guarding 2 on his when he's playing kind of that hedge man. He's hedging now. He's recovering without giving up lobs. Everybody gives up, like every big man is going to give up like a lob here and there. But
Yeah.
you guys remember a few years ago, it was Lob City when you play the Rockets because he couldn't get back in time without, So now,
Hey, and if you're worried about the lobs, man, Steven Adams is getting cooked on some of those pick and rolls.
yeah, Steven Adams, he's defensively, he has a lot of rust that he needs to wear off. But I think people just have, in my opinion, impossible standards for him. To me,
Yeah.
the pick and roll defense has been really impressive. Even more impressive is the isolation defense on the perimeter against ball handlers. Best defensive lineup is him out there with with a man and Tari. I hope that he continues that for the season because I don't know if it's sustainable for an entire season for him to play that way. Maybe some of that is impacting his offense. I think there's a little bit of that because he's making them more of an emphasis to be more active on defense, even more than last year. I think it's going to take time for him to get the stamina to do both. But like looking at his shooting numbers, I think right now his efficiency is in the tank. But to me,
Yeah.
what I'm looking at is encouraging. He is shooting on jump shots, 32%. To me, that he shouldn't take as many jump shots, but that'll come. Here's where it's really tanking his efficiency: 42% on layups. And from what he like, those are, and these are not even like he's underhand scooping Kyrie layups, point blank, just missing layups, getting blocked, not really. And we saw what he did against New York. That is more representative of what he is. He's to me that I'm not worried about that. Once that comes up, all the efficiencies are going to jump up.
I just think it's that lift,
Yeah,
right?
explosion. It's explosion.
Like he's given his limitations. When he doesn't have lift, you're going to see it. It's
Right.
like I'm gonna do a classic comparing myself to playing pickup. When I'm not in the gym, I'm trash. Like when I'm not physically capable, I don't have the natural gifts to overcome that. And at the NBA level, he's kind of like that, right? If he's not 100%, like his limitations now become glaring.
They're exacerbated.
And
Yep. And I think for
so
him, it'll just be getting more in shape to play that style on both ways because it's not easy to be a two-way player. I agree with the not benching him. To me, if you're going to give him money, then find out what he can do. Like I rather know now than if we get to a playoff series and we need him for offense and we don't know if he can close out on defense. So to me,
yeah.
these experiences are valuable. They're too
And
old.
flank him with the right lineups, man. Like give
Yeah,
him a
yeah,
Menentari like consistently. You know what I
right.
mean?
There,
So
he's too old for that. Like he's too old to be getting benched, especially when he's not being lazy. There's one thing if he's like being lazy, but I think Ime gets stuck on certain lineups and matchups or theoretical
yeah,
matchups.
yeah.
And a lot of coaches do. They like
Well,
anticipate certain things and then they just go with it and it ends up biting them because sometimes you got to just force the issue with your own what you're good at rather than trying to adjust to what the other team is.
Ime's got some of that old school stubbornness. One of the things is he's flanked oftentimes in that starting lineup by two guys who are slow laterally relative to their counterparts in the NBA. Jabari Smith, Dylan Brooks. They're not fast-footed, right? Um, but you change that with Amen Thompson and Tari Eason, and all of a sudden you have guys that can really cover for Şengün and make it all come together in a way that and I'm not saying that they're bad on defense with the starting lineup, but I'm just saying I think there are tweaks that could be made that could really improve this team. And if they're not going to explore it, then I think they're doing themselves a disservice. So,
yeah, I totally agree. All right, so we have San Antonio coming in. What are your predictions on that game?
We play the Spurs again.
I think so. If
I
I'm
hate
not,
playing the Spurs.
yeah, I think
hate playing the
we
Spurs.
had we got to play them multiple times in the span of like 2 weeks. I don't know why we get so
Like I
used.
said, there's just not a good matchup for Şengün. They have the height, they have the length, and Sohan's one of those annoying ass, like dirty, rugged, bumping. He's Draymond style, right?
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a good matchup for Şengün specifically, which then becomes, all right, what's the counter? So I don't know. I don't like that matchup because it's going to force the Rockets to spread out. It's going to force the Rockets to play fast, but it's also going to force the Rockets to play a little small. So it's like, which of those styles? It's kind of a style clash, and which one wins. But I will say that this upcoming stretch of this schedule is where the Rockets really have to eat. I think they have the Spurs, maybe the Pistons.
Now we got Spurs, Thunder, Pistons, Wizards,
Yep.
Clippers, Bulls. Yeah. Bucks, Pacers.
Right.
Yeah. So they got to rack up and we got Blazers twice.
Okay. So I mean, they really got to like come out of here,
Yeah.
Several games above 500. But like I said, I fear that this is the type of team that plays up and down to their competition. So we'll find out.
I think as the rotations normalize, that variant will go away. I think starting off the rotations were just crazy, but I personally think he's going to have a bounce back game at home since it's not in San Antonio. I think that to me, even though Victor is a hard matchup for him, there are things he can do. It just needs to be just like he was playing against Cat, which is go downhill and force the issue. Is the same thing. You just got to be physical and use that to your strength. He looked hella passive and scared. Honestly, he was playing scared to me the other times where they played. I don't know why. Maybe he was unsure of himself. But he needs to just force the issue. Try to get Wembanyama in foul trouble. So that should be very easy because he's a young player and is very aggressive to block every shot. So use that to your advantage. To me, the main difference with the Spurs this year, like you said, they're not going to be as bad of a team because they have Chris Paul. Chris Paul impacts winning on multiple levels, and I'm sure he's teaching Wemby.
And they have Harrison Barnes.
Harrison Barnes is a
good basketball player.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think we just need to win, though. It's a home game. They're not a great team. We should be able to come up and win and beat them, and I feel like we will. That's my. I just think that we can beat them. But appreciate you, bro. Been a long overdue. I think this one might be over an hour, so y'all got y'all fixed. We made up for at least 2 weeks. So you want to let them boys know where they can find you, bro, on social media?
Yeah, at Roosh Williams on this podcast. Yeah, that's what it's been, man. I mean, I think we talked about it, but I've been super busy, so I haven't been. It's interesting this season. I haven't been like live tweeting as much as I do. I've been kind of just falling back and like seeing the landscape. And it's funny when you're not active, but all the same conversations are still happening. Everyone's freaking out after the game. The space is going down. Trade this person, trade that person. Fire Ime Udoka. Blah blah blah. I was right, you were wrong. Blah blah blah. So it's funny, but it's also allowed me to just kind of appreciate like where they're at. And so, like I said, 4-3 could easily be 6-1, 5-2. I think that's a positive. We got to remember they were 0-3 last season, right? The mark will be, last thing I'll say, the mark will be, and I'm going off the top of my head, so I might be wrong, but the mark will be if the Rockets can get 4 games above 500 or better. I think last season the best they did was 6-3. I think the best they did was 3 games above 500, if I'm not mistaken. And if that is correct, that means that they have not been 4 games or better above 500 since 2020, since the 19-20 bubble season. And so that would be like a kind of like, oh shit, it's been a minute, and let's see if we can actually take this further. So
yeah, I totally agree. And I hope with the stretch that they have coming up that they can do that and actually take care of business. If you're new to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop, and we're going to keep dropping that.